Oh, thanks for being with us. First, my opening statement. The FBI's ability to get Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's closest advisor, confidant, and State Department Deputy Chief of Staff, to sing can make or break this election. Right now, reports are the FBI is negotiating with Huma's lawyers, stemming from her joint computer with her pervert husband, disgraced ex-Congressman Anthony Weiner. Here we go again. We are 9 days away from an election that will redefine this nation. And as I said last night, we're on the precipice of yet another constitutional crisis because of the Clintons. This time involving an alleged pedophile, our nation's top secrets, and a couple of grifters from Arkansas. Now, you already know how I feel about all this from last night's Open. The American people are entitled to know, before we go to the voting booth, what it was that caused FBI Director Comey to reopen this case. He's got to tell us what it was that he discovered, what was so big that he violated Justice Department and FBI guidelines and alerted the nation. He cannot hide behind protocol now. The justice guidelines that don't let me talk rule doesn't work anymore. The we don't comment on pending cases doesn't work anymore. There are no ethical prohibitions now. You have been invited by the target and her surrogates to release the information that caused you to reopen a closed case. If there is an indictment, Hillary is now foreclosed from objecting to such disclosure. My bet is she knows you won't release anything, but thinks that she's calling your bluff. If she really wanted to know, all she has to do is sit down with Huma and ask her. The investigation, of course, is not then compromised, since documentary evidence, in this case emails, don't change. So it's time to do what you didn't do last year, a thorough, unbiased investigation, using all the tools available, search warrants, and impaneling a grand jury. No more "Mother, may I" routine. You're the one who got yourself into this mess, and now the American people are in a bigger mess. In 2013, Huma signed a document under penalty of perjury when she left the State Department that she had turned over all classified materials and she was not retaining copies. It seems that the metadata on 650,000 emails suggest otherwise. Huma also swore under oath that she searched through all her devices for anything State Department related. And she had a chance to turn things over, and she didn't. So start your negotiation there, Mr. Director. You've got her in a corner, and it's time to throw some punches. Make your deal with Huma now. If you don't, and Hillary gets elected, no one will care. Hillary will do what she's always done. She'll be appalled at Huma. She'll say she didn't know, she didn't remember, she short-circuited, she had a brain clot, she had no idea. Look, the American people are already traumatized by the Clinton scandals, and we just can't take 4 more years of them. Word is that although Justice told your FBI guys to shut down the Clinton Foundation investigation, some of them kept it still going. The Justice Department is dirty, Jim, and you know it. Our Attorney General actually pled the fifth on the Iran ransom probe. And Loretta Lynch meeting with the spouse of a target, and then the target herself days later saying, "I'm going to keep Loretta Lynch as my AG if I become president," is bribery, pure and simple. Jim, go back to your roots. You were once a great prosecutor. Don't let Washington ruin you, too. You need to send these Clintons back to where they came from. It's time for you to buck up, put on your big boy pants, and make a deal with Huma for the sake of this nation. You've got until Tuesday. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, #Judge Jeanine. And joining me now is the Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization and son of Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump. Good evening.
How are you?
I am fine.
Good to be with you.
How are you?
I love that.
Well, you know, we are in a mess here.
We are.
You are basically new to politics. 9 days to go. As you look back at all of this, what is the thing that shocked you most?
How corrupt the system is. Honestly, how corrupt the system is. I'm a civilian, a plain civilian. We'd never been in politics. And when you go from scandal to scandal to scandal, you look at the Clinton Foundation. It's one of the great Ponzi schemes in modern day history. You look at, you know, the Clintons making $250 million in the last 15 years, effectively, since leaving the Oval Office. You look at the email scandals. You look at Donna Brazile giving Hillary Clinton, you know, questions ahead of the debates. I mean, you go scandal to scandal, not to mention, obviously, all the scandals from, you know, Watergate and then, you know, Clinton getting impeached.
Well, and you know, selling the Lincoln bedroom and all of the file gates and everything. Everywhere they go, there's a scandal.
And honestly, it almost makes me lose a little, it makes me lose a lot of faith in the government. I mean, it's really, really sad. And you don't see it until you're front and center. And you know what, listen, I'm not a fan of people stealing emails. But the one thing I'll tell you that's come out of the WikiLeaks, it's actually shown how bad our system truly is. When you look at those Project Veritas videos, it's horrible. I mean, you have DNC operatives who are incredibly close to Robbie Mook, who have been to the White House 350 times, who are bragging about inciting riots that shut down a city. I mean, this is what these people do in politics.
You know, Eric,
it's horrible.
when they say that, you know, that your father is inciting violence, and then we find out that they're the ones who are inciting the violence, they talk out of both sides of their mouth, and then we find out from WikiLeaks that that's just not the case. So why were they so close? Why was Hillary beating your dad? And we're going to get to the numbers now, which are totally different. Yeah. What do you think Americans, are they not thinking?
No, I think so many of the polls are honestly not correct. I mean, so many of the polls, you had some of the polls that were out this week that were oversampling Democrats by 12%, and you're sitting there saying, give me a break. I mean, like, you know, Obama in his first term won by 5%, and you know, I mean, it doesn't even compare. So I don't know, but it's really, really amazing. I think people are finally seeing it. I think people are seeing how corrupt the system is, having a front row seat to it. And again, as a civilian, I could never believe it. I could never imagine that people would stoop to the lows that they stoop to, you know, especially in these political campaigns. But they will do anything to maintain power because it lines their own pocket. It keeps them in the Marvel offices.
They're lining the pockets of the people around them as well. It's almost as though it's an organized criminal enterprise because this octopus of connections and this cesspool of corruption, they're all making money. But I want to move on because we could both go on forever on this. But the numbers now, what do they tell us?
Listen, we're doing great. We're doing absolutely great. You look at early voting in Florida. You look at early voting in Ohio. You look at early voting in North Carolina, Nevada. I mean, so many places. We are doing so well.
What do the exit polls tell you?
They're telling us a great, great, great story. I mean, Republicans are up tremendously. Democrats are down. Independents are bigger than ever this election cycle. Independents, as you know, break heavily toward us. People want something new. They don't want the same nonsense that they see every single day. I mean, Hillary, and I say this all the time, Hillary's been a politician longer than I've been alive. I mean, who feels comfortable that she can actually fix the mess that we're in as a country? We've got $20 trillion worth of debt. We've got broken educational systems. We have a broken military. We have a broken VA. Median income in this country hasn't gone up in 15 years. I talk about it all the time. Median income hasn't gone up in 15 years. You look at Obamacare. Obamacare might be the greatest lie in the history of politics. They said you're going to be able to keep your doctor, you're going to be able to keep your plan. The average family was going to save $2,500 a year. In Arizona, the premiums are up 116%.
It's crazy.
And you know what? There's no accountability. And that's the frustrating thing.
And there's no consequence.
In the real world, in private industry, there's accountability. When you say something and the reverse happens, you're held accountable. I mean, there's no accountability.
None. What about the numbers? 12 points last week, and now there's a 2-point spread in the ABC poll, and that's even before all this stuff came out with Jim Comey announcing they're reopening that investigation. Talk to me about that.
We're going to win. I mean, it's just that simple. People want their country back. People want a voice. People want to stop these corrupt politicians. Say what you will about my father. He's a man that can't be bribed. He's a man that can't be bought. He's a man who's put $100 million of his own money into this campaign. This is tough stuff, as you know. I mean, it's tough on him. It's tough on the whole family. I mean, it's tough stuff. This isn't an easy process. He's doing this. This country has given my father everything. It's given our family everything. That's why he's doing it, because he's seeing our country flushed down the tubes by incompetent politicians.
You know what impresses people the most? I have to tell you this, Eric. I look at you. I was in Florida with Lara, I don't know, Thursday, Friday. I've lost the days. And Donald Jr. and Ivanka and her husband. And, you know, Ivanka has a baby in the middle of all of this. You kids are so committed. Your family is so connected. You are the epitome of what family is all about. Do you realize that if your dad wins, I mean, you know, I love your dad, and I'll leave that aside, but America's blown away by how close you are as a family.
Yeah, there's no question. And by the way, if no one else is going to fight for him, and I mean that, you know who's fighting for him? It's the American people. He doesn't have the special interests. He doesn't have these corporations coming out, Wall Street giving him hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. He doesn't have the super PACs. He doesn't have the entire mainstream media. You know who fights for him? His family. And you know who else fights for him? The American people. And by the way, together we're going to win this thing. There's no question we're going to win this thing. We have to take back our country. I mean, we have to win. Our country cannot survive another 4 years of the mess we're in. And you know the depressing thing to me, John? They can't even admit the problems that we have. They can't admit that $20 trillion is an almost unsurmountable amount of debt. They can't admit that our VA is in shambles. They can't admit that Obamacare failed. They can't admit that we have a depleted military. They can't admit that all of our jobs are going overseas. They don't even talk about these problems. In fact, they say that everything's wonderful. And it's so, so sad. You better recognize the problems because we've got issues, and my father will do a great job fixing this nation.
All right, Eric Trump. I'm dying to ask you what you're going to do when this is over, but we don't have time.
Going back to work.
Eric Trump, so good to have you here. Thanks so much for being with us on Justice. Now, let's hear from both candidates on the trail today as they battle it out just days before the election.
I will continue to address and expose the criminal corruption of Hillary Clinton and its threat to the survival of our democracy. But I also want to spend these next 9 days with the wonderful people of this country talking about my vision for making America great again. And let's talk positive. Let's talk positive.
Donald Trump is doing his best to confuse, mislead, and discourage the American people. I mean, he's such a downer, right? And it's time for him to stop fear-mongering, stop distracting from what's really at stake, and frankly, stop disgracing our democracy. We can't let him get away with this.
Joining me now with reaction, Trump campaign senior communications advisor Jason Miller. All right, Jason, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Justice. I know you're quite busy.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. No, listen, 9 days. I don't even want to ask you what your schedule is like, but let's talk about the polls. What do we know as we sit here tonight?
All right, so here's what we know. National polls are moving in the right direction. We see the LA Times.
Which in your mind is moving toward Donald Trump.
Yes, moving towards, yeah, absolutely. Got to make sure that's clear. Mr. Trump's had a very good week. Not only does the LA Times poll have him in front by 2 points, but there's been a big development. That ABC Washington Post poll that came out last week, as you mentioned earlier, that said Mr. Trump was down 12 points. First of all, we don't think he was ever down 12 points. I think that was outside. But the entire week, it's been moving. Republicans have been coming home. That was the first thing. Beginning of the week, we had Republicans coming home, making a lot of noise. Then the news about the Obamacare premiums came out. That fundamentally, when we look back on this race, this will be a huge week for this campaign because not only was it Mr. Trump talking about how we need to repeal Obamacare, but every newspaper and every newscast in the country was talking about the local state increases. As you guys talked about Arizona with 116%. Don't forget about Pennsylvania with a 53%. Every state has some kind of horror story about just how much these hikes are going up. And think about this for a moment. If you're, at a certain point, this becomes, can you afford rent? Or can you afford to pay your health care?
I have a story for you, Jason. A friend of mine who was a sitting district attorney emailed that his health care is now more than his mortgage and his taxes combined. Everything, his health care costs more than his mortgage. It's crazy.
Well, and even if you're not going through Obamacare, if you own a small business, what it's doing to the plans that you have to offer and the way that premiums are spiking, the cancellation letters that people are getting, this is some scary scary stuff. So this hit this week, and this was a shockwave.
And then we had another shock.
Then we had another shock where it turns out through these WikiLeaks emails that came out, there's email with a memo from Doug Band, who's kind of the partner in crime. I used to say that tongue-in-cheek, although I'm not sure how tongue-in-cheek that is anymore, with Bill Clinton, where they literally had a plan laid out. Here's how we can go and make $66 million effectively selling access to office. Here's our plan, to the point where the Clinton Foundation had to consult an outside law firm to see if this plan would even go and jeopardize their nonprofit charitable status, which is pretty big stuff. That was front page news. And then we had the bombshell on Friday. And so, but the numbers, the net effect on this
race. The bombshell, of course, being the FBI reopening the case.
Yes. And so what we saw this week was with the Republicans coming home, with the Obamacare premiums, with all this news, at the same time while Donald Trump is out there laying out his vision for America, his plan for an urban renewal, how we're going to repair and rebuild our inner cities. All of a sudden, this race, I mean, we believe we're leading, but even the most hardened media skeptic says it's a jump ball.
Well, okay, and the truth is that this has been the craziest election that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and most people as well. But do you expect any dirt being dropped on you before the election by the Clinton campaign?
Look, you can't imagine going into last week of a campaign and not to be attacked from somewhere. But here's the thing you need to know about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a closer. He is a fighter. He is absolutely going to do everything it takes to go and win this race because he cares about it that much. You had Eric Trump on just a moment ago, and I've had the opportunity to get to know the family, and they're fantastic. Mr. Trump wants to win this for the country so badly, and every time you talk to him, even when the camera's off and people aren't around, here's what he wants. Here's how he's going to make things happen. Here's how we're going to have great justices. Here's how we're going to go and tear up these terrible trade deals or renegotiate good ones. He wants this so badly, and the energy is there. And it's not just the energy from him. And you see these rallies, 10, 20,000 people, 20,000 in Tampa the other day. And this is, we haven't seen this in our lifetimes. And this is something, this energy, and they're not your traditional political activists. They're regular, hardworking folks who maybe haven't gotten active in politics, who want to change the direction of the country. And we're excited about it.
Well, I can't imagine you're not being excited. But I think the key word with Donald Trump is energy. The man is he is a ball of energy, without a doubt. Jason Miller, thanks so much for being with us. As I said to Eric, I'd love to know what you guys are going to do when you have a day off.
Sleep, probably.
Thanks for being with us. And J. Christian Adams is an election lawyer who's worked in the Department of Justice. Next, I get his take on the FBI's investigation and all those emails. Plus, General Mike Flynn is introducing Donald Trump at a rally in New Mexico right now. This is a live picture. The general is going to join me next.